President Obama and the First Lady meeting with the families of the victims at Fort Hood. Before that ceremony, the president calling the massacre there incomprehensible. Charles.
I would agree. I think it was a very sober speech. It was respectful to the fallen, and he did have that reference that we saw to the element of jihadism in this attack.
Well, he didn't use that word. He used...
Yeah, he never uses the word the war on terror is over and all of this stuff, but there's no escaping it. It seems as if he didn't jump to a conclusion, but he's reached a conclusion or two, that if somebody yells Allah Akbar as he shoots up a room, there might be an element of jihadism involved.
You think he's reached that conclusion?
Well, I thought the statement he made today, although it was indirect, about murdering in the name of God, indicated that. It's pretty obvious. You really have to be obtuse to deny it, and he didn't want to be obtuse. I tell you who was. General Casey's speech had one reference to the actual attack. He spoke of it as unimaginable. Well, he ought to imagine it's already happened. And except for that single reference to the violence as unimaginable, he could have been speaking about a bus accident. You know, which it wasn't. It wasn't a tragedy. It was a murder, a mass murder.
Steve?
Well, this is of a piece with what Casey said on the Sunday shows, where he actually said that a greater tragedy could be its impact on diversity. Really? A greater tragedy than killing 13 people? I mean, I think Casey, whatever the investigation shows about what he knew and what was reported up to him about Major Hassan, somebody should put him in a box somewhere and not let him give public speeches like this anymore, because it's frankly very insulting.
As this investigation continues to unfold and we find out more about these communications between Major Hassan and this radical imam in Yemen, there are some who have taken this and the political correctness has surrounded it. Evan Thomas of Newsweek, as we saw in James's piece, said he cringes that Hassan is a Muslim because it inflames the right wing. You have others who have refused to acknowledge them. You had in Catherine Herridge's piece a defense attorney for Zacarias Moussaoui, an al-Qaeda conspirator, who said, let's be serious. There is no benign communication between somebody, an American military officer, and a known fundamentalist Muslim preacher who's advocating the killing of American troops by suicide bombers.
He's right. I mean, it's very obvious. I mean, it is, as I mentioned earlier, you've got to be obtuse to imagine that you're going to have a benign communication with a jihadist who's urging Americans to go, Muslim Americans, to kill other Americans or join the bad guys in Afghanistan and elsewhere. But this political correctness, I don't think is going to change. It is endemic. Look what role it played in the lead up here. Hassan gave a grand rounds, which is the most important academic event in a teaching hospital, in which the doctors and students and residents gather in an auditorium. Somebody stands up and he gives a lecture on a particularly instructive case. Well, Hassan gave one, apparently. NPR reported this on Friday, in fact, in which he began speaking about how if you're a non-believer in Islam, you end up in hell, your head is cut off, and you have hot oil poured into your throat. One of the psychiatrists who witnessed this and whom NPR spoke with said it freaked everyone out in the room, and you would be if you were in that room, but no one spoke out. Why? Because nobody wanted to carry the accusation of being prejudiced against a Muslim member of the community, even though this was extremely strong evidence that the guy was either disturbed or dangerous. And in fact, he was both.
Steve, last word.
Well, I would actually say that the reason that people are talking about these so-called benign communications is because that's what the White House and the intelligence community is putting out right now. They're the ones who are labeling. Nobody has seen what these things actually said. So they're telling us that these are benign communications. I think that's actually evidence of political correctness, because as Charles said, there is no benign communications between somebody like this and an al-Qaeda leader. It simply doesn't exist, and the fact that we're continuing to talk about it this way suggests to me that this political correctness will be persistent and hard to overcome.